Hello and welcome to all. Two Brazilian brothers who use food supplements for muscles, a bodybuilder who abuses growth hormones, or a bodybuilder who is pumped up with synthetic oil. Here are the 10 bodybuilders who have really gone too far. The bodybuilders addicted to steroids and other anabolic drugs think very sincerely that they are part of a certain elite. Because for them, the fact of becoming monsters of muscles is a feat that only the most ambitious and most reckless of all can really reach. The American bodybuilder Rich Piana had a theory that he called the 5%, which he said represented the percentage of people who are willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals. Of course, Rich Piana thought he was in this category of go-getters, so he consumed tons of steroids and other growth hormones for years. Thanks to this ultra-toxic mix, Rich acquired considerable strength and muscularity like no other. Displaying his bulging muscles on social networks, the American bodybuilder did not miss an opportunity to praise the merits of steroids, even going so far as to openly tell how he obtained certain substances in a totally illegal manner. Of course, Rich Piana soon suffered complications from his corrosive drug regime, and he was diagnosed with several health problems over time. Hair loss, gynecomastia, as well as liver toxicity were all serious problems that affected the steroid-crazed bodybuilder. However, instead of stopping this fatal cocktail, Rich Piana abused it without any moderation, and what had to happen finally happened. Indeed, this 143-kilogram monster was victim of a heart attack in 2017, and after 2 weeks of coma, he died in his hospital room. His autopsy revealed that his heart and liver were twice as big as normal, which was obviously due to his abusive use of steroids and growth hormones. The tragic story of Dean Warmby should be a reminder to all bodybuilders who do not hesitate to stuff themselves with junk food and doping products in order to reach monstrous measurements. Dean was a British bodybuilder who proudly showed off his muscles on social networks. He sculpted his body, and his bulging muscles were the result of hundreds of hours of hard training. But not only, because the English bodybuilder was also on a high-calorie diet equivalent to an intake of 10,000 calories per day. Energy drinks, pizzas, and steroids. Here's the explosive cocktail that Dean ingested almost daily to maintain his muscle mass. But this unorthodox diet ended up devastating the body of the young bodybuilder, who was diagnosed with a liver tumor that was more than 27 centimeters and which was totally inoperable. For this reason, Dean was told that his days were numbered and that he had at most 3 weeks to live. The unfortunate bodybuilder then decided to leave everything behind in order to enjoy the last moments of his life with his family. And although the doctors gave him a fortnight before he died, Dean Warmby was able to survive for several more months. A reprieve that he obviously used to spend as much time as possible with his family, but also to warn young bodybuilders against the dangers of junk food and taking steroids and anabolics. Let's just hope his message got through. Some bodybuilders are so obsessed with their body appearance that they will try anything to increase their musculature, including taking dangerous cocktails of anabolics and steroids, or even worse, injecting a synthetic oil directly into the muscles. This last technique involves injecting synthol, an oily solution based on fatty acids and lidocaine, into the muscles that you want to gain in mass. But as you can imagine, injecting a foreign substance into the body is not the best idea of the century, especially since the toxicity of synthol is no longer to be proven, and that all those who had the misfortune to try it are today paying a very heavy price of their own people. Kirill Tereshin, a young man from Pyatigorsk in the south of Russia, is precisely one of them. This social network addict wanted at all costs to be able to display his big arms in his photos in order to impress the gallery with his dream muscles. But instead of sweating in the gyms of his hometown, Kirill decided to take a shortcut by injecting synthol in his biceps and triceps. But the result was far from what he expected, because the oily matter he had injected had monstrously swollen his arms, making them literally deformed. And even worse, Kirill suffered from an infection caused by the synthol, which had attacked his muscular tissues and caused severe damage. An emergency surgery was needed to remove the necrotic tissues from Kirill's arms, which were in serious danger of being amputated. Hulk and Conan are two very strong characters coming straight from the fertile imagination of their creators. But they are also the names used by two Brazilian brothers, Tony Geraldo and Alvaro Pereira. These two bodybuilding enthusiasts dreamed of one day looking like their idol Arnold Schwarzenegger and having a beautiful body sculpted in marble. But although they spent endless hours in the gym, they did not make much progress in their project to become muscle monsters. But one day, the two brothers accidentally stumbled upon Potene B12, a high vitamin supplement used in the diet of horses and other large domestic animals. So naturally, the two bodybuilders started consuming it, which made them gain a lot of mass. The result was so convincing that they started injecting Potene B12 directly into their veins so that it would work even faster. Very quickly, their bodies inflated like balloons, and false muscles grew on them as if by magic, giving them a rather impressive build. But Hulk and Conan know perfectly well that their practice is extremely harmful for their health, which was confirmed by their doctor. But the attraction of the muscle is even stronger for these two than their own body's safety, and that's how they continue their daily injections for more than 30 years. Tom Prince is an American professional bodybuilder who had his heyday in the late 1990s. This mass of muscular mass, which weighed 144 kilograms, had indeed very good classification in the most prestigious competitions of bodybuilding. His massive body was as if carved out of a block of granite, and the specialized magazines put him on practically all their front pages. Tom Prince gained recognition and fame almost worldwide until 2002, when he abruptly ended his career, which was well underway. He had also obtained the third place on the podium a year earlier, and his results in the rankings were on the rise. But Tom's early retirement was in fact due to a serious kidney disease that he had been diagnosed with, and which was most likely due to his abuse of steroids and other doping products. Despite a kidney transplant and expensive treatment, his condition only got worse as time went on. Tom Prince finally lost his life last February from a cancer that metastasized in his blood and reached his lungs and his brain. Flex Wheeler is probably one of the greatest bodybuilders who ever existed, and this is according to Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. The record of this 125-kilogram giant is indeed filled with the most prestigious titles, and his practice of martial arts gave him a flexibility out of standards, allowing him to make choreographies of any beauty. But to reach such a level, Flex Wheeler had to train sometimes day and night while stuffing himself with food and protein supplements. And of course, the American bodybuilder also abused a multitude of steroids and anabolics, to the point where he became totally dependent on them. But if Flex Wheeler reached the rank of legend in the world of bodybuilders, his excesses eventually caught up with him, and his health deteriorated greatly. Indeed, like many bodybuilders before him, Flex was diagnosed with end-stage renal failure, requiring an immediate kidney transplant. But despite his surgery, the ex-bodybuilder suffered serious complications with his blood circulation. Unfortunately for him, his condition worsened to such an extent that his right leg had to be amputated. We couldn't do this video without telling you about one of the most controversial bodybuilders of his generation. Meet Mustapha Ismail, the man who entered the Guinness Book of World Records for the huge measurements of his arm. Nicknamed the Egyptian Popeye, Mustapha Ismail has indeed the biggest biceps on the planet, with 80 centimeters of arm circumference, which is almost equivalent to the waist of a small adult man. This bodybuilder settled in the United States, asserts to whoever will listen to him that his biceps and triceps are the result of relentless training and a solid diet. Mustapha assures indeed to follow intense gym sessions, since he was taunted on his sickly thinness in his native country. The Egyptian bodybuilder also reveals the enormous quantity of victuals he ingests daily, according to him, to support the inhuman effort that he inflicts on his arms. But in all likelihood, there is only to see the rest of the body of Mustapha to realize that there is a catch. Indeed, his oversized arms are the only muscles of his body to be inflated to block, exactly like the unfortunate synthol addicts. The young bodybuilder is thus strongly suspected to have resorted to an injection of synthol or another similar product in the muscles of his arms so that they gain considerably in volume. And although Mustapha is stubborn to deny this evidence, we can only advise him to do like Popeye, preferring canned spinach to synthol inoculations. The case of Greg Valentino should be more publicized so that the young bodybuilding enthusiast public can finally know the dangers of steroids and the risks linked to the easy and fast bulking up. Because you never get anything for nothing, and no one will ever be able to go beyond the limits of their own body without paying the price. Greg Valentino was an American bodybuilder despised by the entire international bodybuilding community for his excessive use of steroids and anabolics. But to get even more muscle mass, Greg had really gone too far by injecting himself directly into the muscles, huge quantities of synthol mixed with other substances just as dangerous. The American bodybuilder soon suffered from a serious infection, and his swollen arms literally exploded like a decomposing whale. And of course, as you're used to by now, we've saved the best for last with one of the most famous and respected bodybuilders in the world, the legendary Ronnie Coleman. This monster with bulging muscles had indeed won the most prestigious competitions, dominating the famous Mr. Olympia contest, where he had accumulated 8 consecutive victories. With a weight of 134 kilograms, a chest of more than 154 centimeters, and biceps of 61 centimeters and a half, Coleman was the bodybuilder that everyone wanted to be like one day. His poster hung in gyms and the bedrooms of pimply teenagers, and his fame and prestige reached global proportions. But his abusive use of steroids would eventually backfire, as he would suffer the after effects of his youthful excesses. He had to undergo several operations on his lumbar vertebrae, and even had a double hip prosthesis fitted so he could walk again. Today, 57 years old, Ronnie Coleman still suffers from chronic pain and even risks becoming paralyzed. And that's it for today. What do you think of these 10 crazy bodybuilders who have gone too far to the point of no return? Which one of them impressed you the most? Tell us in the comments, and if you like this video, don't forget to put a like and subscribe and activate the notifications. See you soon for new discoveries out of the ordinary.